welcome to Arts Express. This is Prairie Miller, and on the show, Pacifica host Garland Nixon on the deep state media, Musk, and Operation Mockingbird.
Good evening. My name is Garland Nixon. Talking politics, international politics, and all kinds of stuff. All right, so let's get back to what we were talking about last week and other things, right? So bottom line is this. This is a, what do you call it? A stream of consciousness hour for me, right? I've had people call in, Garland, I think you're trying to. And I'm like, first of all, I studied the philosophy of Zen, so the whole I'm trying to stuff wouldn't work anyway for me. But that's fine if that's what somebody needs to think. You're trying to do this or that. And I'm like, I'm not really, it's my free hour. It's an hour for me just to say whatever's coming to mind, whatever thing. Sometimes I blurt things out and afterwards I think, I shouldn't have said that. I'll probably get thrown off the air. But the other side of it is this. If it's my free hour, if I get thrown off the air, that's fine too. So anyway, let's get going. But I'll start with a conversation I was having with a friend earlier this week. And they sent me this thing from Greg Palast. And it was talking about Trump didn't win because of whatever voters that couldn't vote and this and that. And so therefore Trump, that I driven up democracy. And this was the point that I made immediately. I said, notwithstanding my position, and before the election, I said, it don't matter. This country's broken. Whoever wins, and everybody listening to my show heard me say this, whoever wins, the other side's going to say I was robbed. It don't matter. That's where we are. We will never have another presidential election where the loser says, I lost fair and square. Every election, you will always, because this is a broken country. Now, let me go on. My next position was, we had a discussion, well, but don't you think our democracy? And I said, I do not believe we live in a democracy, nor do I ever believe believe that we lived in a democracy. Let me make my point. Okay. Couple of things. Number one, this country started off only white male landowners could vote. Well, clearly that's a small minority, which means it ain't a democracy. It's basically a aristocracy. You know what I mean? It's basically it's feudal system. The feudal lords are the only ones that can vote. Well, if the only people that are voting are the feudal lords, then you ain't got a democracy. That's certainly out. You've got a feudal system. Number one. Number two, okay, so they added more people. Women couldn't vote. That's half the population. Black people couldn't vote. Well, in a lot of southern states, 2/3 of the people in the state were black, slaves or non-slave, right? So is it a democracy? So that means that if black people couldn't vote and women couldn't vote, what'd you have? What percentage of the people could vote, right? White women couldn't vote. No black folks could vote. Native Americans couldn't vote. That ain't a democracy, right? Okay, eventually women get the vote, eventually black folks get the vote, but you still had Jim Crow in the South where black folks could legally vote, but they was getting shot and killed and lynched to try to vote. So you had all of this going on. Now, let me bring you to modern day. There's an article, go over to covertaction.com. That's a good site. It's run by Dr. Jeremy Kuzmarov. He does a lot of stuff. Covert Action talks about CIA intelligence, stuff like that. And one of the things that he talks about is Operation Mockingbird, where the CIA had like 400 people working in mainstream media, and their job was to ensure that the mainstream media, the media outlets put out what the CIA wanted them to put out. A lot of people heard of Operation Mockingbird. And the other thing that they did was there was various magazines or whatever that may be left-leaning or maybe opposed to whatever the CIA didn't want. And they would go after them, try to, make up stuff about them, discredit them, take them down, put in agent provocateurs, you name it, right? So let me say this. Do you have a democracy if the government agencies are working to ensure that people do not get honest news? No, you don't. You don't, do you? In order to have a democracy, and this is critical, let me say this is critical. In order to have a democracy, one thing is absolutely required: informed voters. So if all the voting and everybody's allowed to vote and everything is vote, but the people believe a bunch of crap because all they get is propaganda. All they get is, hey, let me turn on CNN. And some guy, today we have former CIA chief, blah, 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 retired, followed by returning retired general, blah, 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 and former NSA boss, blah, blah, blah. Now we have former FBI, blah, blah, blah. That's what you get on Fox, CNN, MSNBC. And sadly, a lot of people think they're getting the truth. They listen to a bunch of retired CIA guys and they think they're getting the truth. That ain't the truth. So the bottom line is I could name any number of things right now that Democrats and Republicans, that if you're a Democrat, you have to believe this. If you're a Republican, you must absolutely believe this, that have been proven through empirical evidence to be false. So here's my point. If the government misleads and misinforms people routinely so that the people believe things and they're voting based on things that are untrue, that are provably false, that ain't a democracy, because you don't have informed voters. And not only do you not have informed voters, you have deliberately misinformed voters, deliberately misinformed by the government. The government is making sure that people don't know the truth, which means it's not a democracy. But then I could go on to what happens in the primaries. Do you have a primary of a democracy if the primaries are stolen? Certainly not. If Bernie's winning and the Democratic Party says, hey, you know this, you know what? I think we'll let Biden win. Oh, Hillary's got to win. I think we'll cheat. Is that so? If the person who is chosen by the voters is then somehow using party machinations thrown out and somebody else is put in, that ain't a democracy. So you can't usurp democracy in the primaries, propagandize the people, and then say somebody's stealing democracy. Sad thing is that what this broken, messed up system that we have that is in deterioration and collapse, that people are so misinformed that they think it's a democracy. That's the sad, that they could even think somebody was stealing a democracy. You can't steal what you never had. Now, we can talk about that. We can talk about Israel. We can talk about whether or not you believe that the United States, unlike me, you might believe that it is a democracy. I don't. Call, you're on air. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Yeah, Mike from D.C., brother.
Mike from D.C. What's happening, my man? What do you got to say? I know you got something important to say, Mike.
Hey, let me ask you, Chris. What do you think about, is this Trump versus Elon feud? Is it really legit, or is it just, or is it just a distraction so to help make Elon Musk popular again so he can sell his electric vehicles and to try to help the Republicans win the midterm elections?
Well, I'll put it like this. When the ruling elite, when billionaires fight, it ain't even part of my fight. Are they fighting over giving people health care? Are they fighting over doing something to help the homeless? You know what happens? People who are caught up in I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican or something like that, they're going to think that's their fight. They're going to be like, yeah, did you hear about, oh, yeah, what? And they're going, oh, I think Elon this. Well, Trump's going to get this. It ain't even their fight. You know what? When the fight's over, both of them going to be billionaires and people out here still going to be broke. So to me, do I really want to be distracted by the billionaires pretending to fight and in the end, they both going to be rich? And you know what's not going to happen? They ain't going to cut off whatever it is, 10 or $15 billion in federal contracts. Elon's still going to get that money. So they're going to walk away. They're going to have you know what they're going to have? They're going to have a pillow fight and pretend like it's a knife fight. Last week, our dear friend who calls in weekly, Max, said, Garland, I said, hey, the Russian language and Russian church and all that stuff is outlawed. And, basically the Ukraine is nothing but a Nazi infested crap hole, and don't ask me to support a bunch of Nazis. So he says, oh, well, Garland, I need proof that that the Russian language is outlawed. So he sent me something. I guess it was supposed to prove that the Russian language is not outlawed in Ukraine. That's what he proved me. This thing says the Russian language has not been banned in Ukraine. Oh, that's what it says. On August 24th, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky signed a new law that aims to deny Russia one of its major avenues of influence. It explicitly bans the Russian Orthodox Church. So you can't speak Russian. You can't go to a Russian church. It's banned. They closed them. They took the Russian Orthodox preachers out and locked them up. So my point is this. I don't know what else to say. Reality is what it is. This is what happened. I don't care what you think, what position you take, but I'm just telling you, in my opinion, the United States is supporting two pure fascist states. One of them is Israel. Israel is a pure fascist state. How can you be committed to genocide and not be fascist? The other one is Ukraine. Something you might want to know. NBC News. This is NBC News. Germans were confronted with images of their country's dark past on Monday night when German public broadcaster ZDF showed video of Ukrainian soldiers with Nazi symbols on their helmets in its evening newscast. In a report on the fragile ceasefire in eastern Ukraine, Moscow correspondent Bernhard Licht used pictures of the soldiers wearing a combat helmet with SS runes of Hitler's infamous black uniform elite corps. A second soldier was seen with a swastika on his gear. I could go on and on with that. It is a open Nazi fascist state. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. BBC Newsnight. Gabriel Gatehouse investigates the links between the new Ukrainian government and neo-Nazis. In place of the defiant speeches, the somber strains of Beethoven now ring out over Independence Square. This revolution is moving into a new phase. They're talking about Ukraine. New phase. But amidst the flowers and children's tribute, flashes of something more sinister. Groups of armed men struck through the square with dubious iconography. That yellow armband is a vault angle, a German symbol used by several SS divisions during the Second World War. Far-right graffiti is appearing on the wall. Need I continue? I could go on and on. I'm not going to read you the whole documentary, but that's from the documentary. The Ukrainian government, I'll put it like this. They have streets named after Stepan Bandera. Stepan Bandera was a Nazi guy who was involved in the massive slaughter of Jews and Poles. Look up Stepan Bandera. He was a Nazi guy who worked with the Nazis. Eventually, they grabbed him. They didn't like him after a while, but look up Stepan Bandera. A Nazi. They have songs. Ukraine is our mother and Bandera is our father. He is a Nazi. Right now, the Ukrainians are having problems with the Poles. You know why they're having with the Poles? Because a lot of Polish people are mad because the Banderites, the Ukrainian Nazis, slaughtered 100,000 Poles at the time during World War II. They hacked them to death with axes and sharp utensils. Pure Nazis. Ukraine is a Nazi state. Simple as that. Let's see. What's this? Okay, NPR.org. President Zelensky has consolidated all TV platforms in Ukraine into one state broadcast and restricted political rivals. Political opposition fears such civil liberty constraints will continue. He basically outlawed all their other parties. He's not a fascist. There's no fascism in Ukraine, but they outlawed every single party and closed every single TV station. And they have one TV station in Ukraine that broadcasts propaganda 24 hours a day. But there's nothing fascist about that. I'm just saying it is what it is. This is from NPR. This is from BBC. This is from NBC News. I didn't make this stuff. Is it Russian propaganda from NBC News? I just study this stuff. I read this stuff. It is what it is.
And coming up next on Arts Express.
Hi.
Hello, madam.
Hello.
You do know why I stopped you today, do you?
She was on her phone.
That's right, you were on your phone.
Yes, and that left her with no hands to drive.
Right.
I'm really sorry. It was an emergency. It wasn't really. I had to phone my
Okay.
babysitter.
Okay, madam, could you please step out of the vehicle?
Okay. Well, look, low jog helped.
I'm sorry.
Sorry about that.
Is this some kind of joke?
No, I'm sorry. It's a TV show.
Could you remove the puppet, please?
I can't. I'm so sorry.
Is there any way we could cover his face for a moment, just so that we could just finish this conversation?
Cover his face?
Or, I don't know, is there any...
I'm not keen on that, actually.
Look, I'm not going to converse with a puppet.
Okay. Why not, dickhead? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry he called you that.
How are you doing that?
I don't know.
Could you please put the Muppet down?
Yes.
And then we can converse.
Okay. No. Wait.
Look, I might have to arrest you.
Yes. Do.
I'm sorry, this isn't right. Can we have these cameras off?
So sorry about
Look,
that.
I really don't want to take you down the station, but it seems to be going
take her
that way.
down the station and take off her clothes.
Nina Conti busted with Monkey on board. And Conti, puppeteer extraordinaire, is our guest today on the show in a conversation about her journey since then to her puppet noir road movie, Sunlight, in which she gets into character literally as well by climbing into a life-size suit of Monkey and enacting every suppressed thought her character Jane dare not normally utter. Monkey transformed now into her plus-sized, so to speak, male persona and kidnapping a hijacked suicidal radio host portrayed by her collaborator in crime, Shanoa Allen. More about that coming up. and with Conti as well considering thoughts about how her father, esteemed British actor Tom Conti, most recently portraying Albert Einstein in Oppenheimer and previously Che Guevara, has influenced her as an actress. What's coming up with her next film opening in the fall, Spinal Tap II, The End Continues, and what exactly Emma Thompson's brain has to do with conceiving Sunlight. Well, with the approach of Father's Day, both Conti's and Shinoa's characters subversively express two patriarchal damaged offspring finding borderline bizarre, unlikely salvation together in each other's broken lives. First, some scenes from Sunlight, then Nina Conti.
Welcome, everyone, to Sunlight Radio. This is your host, as always, Roy Belvedere. You haven't heard from me for a while, and I apologize for that. I've been indisposed.
What the?
Hello?
Hi!
You okay?
No!
I gotta get to Colorado. I gotta drop myself off the lake, and then you can have your van back.
I'm not letting some birthday clown take me to
I'm
Colorado.
not a birthday clown.
This is my vehicle. I need you to stop driving it.
Oh. Can we go to the lake now?
No. I'm gonna dig up my dead dad.
It's okay. I got a credit card in my panties. If I miss the hiring period at the lake, I'm gonna have to sell my ass. I don't know what it's worth, monkey ass, these days.
I want to dig up my dead dad so I can say,
That's weird. Do you like me?
I do like you.
Not the one inside, because we're different.
Does this look like a person who's mentally fit?
She's afraid to come out. She's afraid you won't like her as much as you like me. We're gonna do big business, Roy. We're gonna leave our old lives behind, tear up the road ahead, and cause a travesty.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Nina Conti, and welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Now, what was the inspiration for you, this film, Sunlight, and the character Jane, that led you to want to create both the film and the character and her journey?
Well, I've been talking as a ventriloquist in comedy clubs and films and just videos for about 21 years to a monkey puppet. And I've been speaking through this monkey. While it sounds flippant, I've invested in the character over that many years, and it's become a part of me. There's no denying it. It's become a very strong voice in my head. And and also a mouthpiece for thoughts I would normally censor for myself. So a very liberating force, this monkey. And I met a lady who works on Star Wars, making all the creatures, Chewbacca and all those guys. And she said she could upscale my small monkey puppet to be a big walking guy so that I could disappear completely into that character and start doing comedy within that monkey. And she did a fantastic job. And it was very shocking. It was like the monkey came to life, became a full life-size guy. And I met a comedian called Shinoa Allen, and we started working together. And the combination of me and him, our characters got on really well. And it just suddenly felt like this is a love story. This is somebody who doesn't know how to be themselves anymore, or would prefer not to be, who works better in a big monkey. What would happen if she, I could completely understand wanting to disappear into another thing, but then falling in love from within it, being very complicated. And so that was the genesis of the thing. And the chemistry between Monkey and Shinoa Allen just seemed like it had to be a film.
And are Jane and Monkey autobiographical for you in any way, emotionally or psychologically?
Very emotionally autobiographical, very psychologically and emotionally autobiographical, yes. And using that feeling logic as opposed to fact logic. But they really, yeah, that's kind of me. I mean, I've got an American accent. It's the only main difference.
And in what sense, emotionally or psychologically?
Well, you know that feeling when you've let yourself down a little bit, and it's because you couldn't speak up, or you feel like you've let yourself down, or you've made a decision based on the wrong things, and you've ended up in a situation based on your lack of voice. And I'm sure that happens to everyone. But then you get given a sort of wand where you don't have to rely on your own voice anymore. You've got this other one that works much better. That's what it is. That's the heart of the thing. But then there's this enormous impracticality because, I mean, you can't live in a monkey suit. It's ridiculous. But if you feel like you need it, like Dumbo's feather, if you feel like you need it to not let yourself down, then you might decide, okay, she's gone. She's had her go. She didn't do well. I'm handing it over to this guy now.
And what can you say about the two Janes being two different sexes and different culturally as well? One British and the other American?
Oh, as in Monkey being British?
Yeah.
Well, I decided not to let that bother me. That's just the monkey's voice. It's his face that works with his face. I think the fact sexually that Monkey is kind of androgynous male, really, but that's also very important. I mean, certainly in comedy, as I was going along, having a male mouthpiece on the end of my arm helped me cut through. And that is just a side of me. I guess it's my more male side. It's certainly not. He's a non-sexual being, Monkey, and that is very useful. There's nothing about him that has really one sex or the other. I know I'm talking about him as a him, but really it's a thing, and that's part of what makes his voice so liberating, I think, because he's not in that equation. You're not being judged on those terms. It's refreshing.
And what was it like for you growing up with a larger-than-life father, the renowned actor Tom Conti, most recently the reincarnation of Albert Einstein in Oppenheimer, and also Che Guevara in 30-Minute Theater? Or was he just dad to you?
I don't know about the Che Guevara. Maybe that needs a fact check. But maybe there was him. I don't know. What was it like to have him as a father? Well, it was very enjoyable in lots of ways because there were when I went to meet him on film sets and stuff, it was very glamorous and fun and led to travel and meeting interesting people. But my life in London otherwise was very kind of ordinary growing up. I've always thought it was great. I think it's the reason I'm a ventriloquist also. The flip side is I didn't want to wander in with nepotism written all over me. And so when I was an actor initially, I felt quite ashamed and embarrassed. And then I thought, oh, hang on, here's something that can be all mine because my dad never tried to be a ventriloquist. And so... It gave me the impetus to take the scenic route to my own career, and I certainly have. But in terms of his sort of philosophy on acting, I think it really helped me because he's always believed acting is just appearing real. He's really like from the real school of acting. He wants to seem real, like you just talk normally. It just seemed like a real person. There's nothing magic about it. It's got to be believable. It's got to be real. And so when I was doing ventriloquism, that was so important to me to act normally and real with this monkey, which gave the monkey more plausibility, I think. I wasn't in a sort of weird happy land where all toys can talk. I was taking the conversations with the monkey very, very steadily, very seriously, and that led him to be real.
And what can you say about Christopher Guest, coming on board as Sunlight's executive producer, and also thanking Emma Thompson and Griffin Dunn in the credits.
Oh, yeah, well spotted. Well, Emma Thompson read the script and said you need to think about more about these things. And it was generous use of her brain and her time to do that, to read it and give me all those thoughts. And it made me go one, I don't know, it was sort of like one further push into the backstory after receiving her notes on the screenplay. So that was her contribution, and Griffin Dunn watched an early cut, and he it was hilarious. It's wrestling. So there's one scene, but I don't want to give spoilers, which could be how do I don't know how to talk about it without spoilers. Anyway, there was a scene that actually, if you watched it wrong, was very ridiculous. And when he replied about that, he really had me laughing, and it just sort of helped me in the edit. But these are just people that I know and who I go to because I trust their judgment, and they're both very helpful. So that's why they're thanked. Christopher Guest has been a supporter for a long time, long-standing. Like, I think he gave me a job in For Your Consideration back in 2007 or something like that. And he's just a great friend and a great. He's a great voice of. What's the word? Oh, I want to think of a good word for him. He's a reality check in a lot of ways, and it was my first time directing, and I felt quite. It felt quite overwhelmed with having to seem like I knew what I was doing in front of a crew when they all knew it was my first time. So you don't want to turn up on day one like a big apology, but if you've never done something before, you feel a little bit like that. And Christopher was a great sounding board for me to trust my instincts, because if ever I phoned him and said, I don't know really what to do about this, because he would say, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I just want to do this. And he was like, well, fine, that's what you should do. That's the right thing. And that's really what our conversation sounded like whenever we had them, with him asking me back, well, what do you want? Well, do that. But it was nice just to have the confidence to do those things from having talked to him.
And what can you say about being part of Spinal Tap II, The End Continues, coming up in September, described as, quote, the band reuniting after a 15-year break for a final concert?
It's so exciting to just be in that at all. I don't know. You never know with these things. The whole thing's unscripted. I have no idea how much I'm in it. I might be spent less than 10 seconds. But anything, like even 10 seconds to be in something that's so epic and iconic, it's just thrilling. To get to meet the band, oh my goodness, the dream come true.
And what are you up to in the film, even if it's a few seconds?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say, I think I've got a lot to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think that
and what inspired you to film Sunlight in the tribal lands of New Mexico? And what can you say about their relationship with you and the crew in creating the film there?
The film is created only because of Shanoa Allen, who is from there, and it was meeting Shanoa as Monkey and then him writing the screenplay. We all went to New Mexico because he's from there. We set it there. He knew crew there. And so that's all due to him. And I just, through working on the story and writing together and doing some improv together and everything, I was falling in love with New Mexico via him. And the way he would tell me about the wrist was full of chilies and the landscape and the place. And I'd never been, but I just, this vision was growing all the time. Through his words, and it had to be there. It's the right place for it. And it makes no sense. Monkey's never been to New Mexico before, but he belongs there completely. When you see him in the landscape, it just looks absolutely right.
And what are your thoughts about the endless war going on there right now, over there where you are, and the UK want to even expand it to China?
Well, any wars were completely horrific. I don't have any thoughts beyond that. I mean, it's just, I don't like it. I don't want to talk about it. No.
And any last word about sunlight?
Well, sunlight, I think, will resonate, even though it looks extreme. I think it's going to resonate emotionally with a lot of people, and hopefully make them laugh hard. It's a kind of an abrasive and dysfunctional comedy, but it's absolutely full of heart. And having we worked on it for 7 years, so hard, and I couldn't be happier with the final cut, which luckily was protected because we did it independently. I couldn't be happier with it, and I'm thrilled to be sharing it with audiences.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Nina Conti, for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, bye.
Thank you, bye.
Good evening, and you're listening to the UK Desk for Arts Express with me, Jack Clark, broadcasting from a nation that still pretends it's running on empire when really it's tripping over the trash.
We will now commence the annual meeting.
I was going to say apologies for interrupting your meeting, but in truth, Lord Mayor, I'm not sorry. I members declare an interest, and I wish to declare an interest in the striking bin workers you can hear outside this. It is a disgrace that the leader of this council has not attended a single meeting of negotiations.
Well, that wasn't a pub row on Broad Street. That was a council meeting. Welcome to Birmingham, where the bins aren't the only things overflowing, where the suits on the panel dish out austerity like chips at a chipper, but flinch at the taste of public answer. Let me set the scene. I was recently on the ground in Birmingham, walking streets strewn with bin bags, witnessing local workers making their stand. The bin workers, the street cleaners, the people who keep your city functioning when no one else wants to. And now they're on strike. Monday, May 20th, I joined workers from Unite the Union outside the council house in Victoria Square in Birmingham. The sun was blazing, and so was the anger. This wasn't just a protest. It was a siege with speakers instead of battering rams, and banners instead of shields. Chants roared like waves through the concrete square. Bin workers, locals, young people, social workers, pensioners, all stood shoulder to shoulder in solidarity. But this wasn't just a show outside. Inside the chambers, members of Unite had infiltrated a council meeting. They disrupted proceedings with chants and calls for accountability, security storming in like riot police at a student sitting. People were dragged out shouting. The tension was pure theatre, but with the stakes of a Greek tragedy. And if you're asking, well, why? I'll let them explain that.
What's going on with this demonstration, say? Why is everybody out here?
Why is everyone out here? Because it's all the cuts what's happening in Birmingham. I'm personally out here over my loss of my wages as a bin worker, but I'm also here for solidarity for the rest of the city and the rest of the country.
Hundreds of workers, bin workers, have been threatened with up to £8,000 pay cuts.
So this is a payment cut for our members in a cost of living crisis.
It's been dressed up as all different things, from equal pay to the council don't have enough money, but we do know that they're bringing in agency staff, and many of the agency staff are actually on a higher rate of pay as well.
They're throwing resources at everything but resolving the situation.
The reality is they are just giving themselves a
5.7% increase in their allowances. Now, if you look at what's going on in the finances at Birmingham, I would argue that the last people who deserve a pay rise is Birmingham City Councillors. We've seen how key these public service workers are, because when they don't work, we've seen what happens out on the streets. The council declared a public health emergency. That is how important they are. Therefore, if somebody's doing a job that is that important, then surely we should be making sure that they get paid properly. And as a minimum, they shouldn't be losing pay.
They're bankrupt because they've wasted so much money. The bin men are also paying for what the council have done as well. So we all need to stick together on this.
What you just heard is a city in crisis. But Birmingham's not alone. The bin strike is part of a wider rot. Not just garbage on the pavement, but a garbage political culture. The council, the second largest in Europe, has effectively declared bankruptcy. It's issued what's called a Section 114 notice. That's the local government equivalent of standing in front of your nan with your empty pockets turned out and going, "Well, love, I've it." And how did we get here? Let's rewind a bit. The financial death spiral started with Birmingham City Council's equal pay liabilities, which now total £650 million. That's right, more than £500 million owed because for years the council underpaid thousands of women workers. Cleaners, teaching assistants, dinner ladies, all of them shafted by a discriminatory pay structure. Add to that the small matter of Oracle, a dodgy IT system the council spent £100 million on, which doesn't even work properly. Think of it like this, my American friends. Imagine if your city installed a $125 million software system that couldn't calculate bin collection schedules and then blamed the sanitation workers when the rats moved in. In the UK, when councils go bankrupt, they can't just file Chapter 11. They issue a Section 114. It means they can't spend on anything except core services. And even that's up for debate. The bins? Not essential, apparently. Paying workers fairly? Definitely not. But they'll find cash for consultants, for property speculation, for naming rights, for branding Birmingham as a global city, while ignoring the rats in the alley behind the bullring. You see, it's not just the bin workers who are suffering. It's the kids growing up next to fly-tipped mattresses and burst bin bags. It's the pensioners navigating dog muck and spoiled food just to get to the post office. It's the same working-class families who always end up living through the consequences of mismanagement they have no part in creating. What blows my mind is the scale of the denial. Birmingham was supposed to be Labour's great municipal flagship, and yet here we are, watching it sink like a wheelie bin in the canal, and still no one takes responsibility. Now, let's draw a line to the US, shall we? Some of you might remember the 1968 Memphis sanitation strike. That strike, led by black sanitation workers, wasn't just about pay. It was about dignity, about being seen. I am a man. That was their slogan. Same fight, different continent, still about class, still about being treated like machinery they operate rather than the people they are. Because here's the thing, in the UK, we've got a culture of managed decline. The Tories underfund local councils to the bone. Now Labour-run councils make impossible choices and working class communities bear the brunt. It's not corruption in the shadows anymore. It's corruption in the daylight with a spreadsheet to prove it. When I first spoke to Claire from Unite the Union, I knew I had to get involved. You can hear it in her voice, the blend of fury and fear. And here's what I say to that. We used to whisper about council corruptions in pubs. Now they print it in PDFs and call it policy. There's no more hiding it. That means it's on us, all of us, to hold the line, to document, to remember, because one day soon we're going to need receipts. And that's what this is, a receipt, a witness statement, a warning. The media will frame it as inconvenience. They'll show you pictures of bins overflowing, but not of the people who haven't had a real pay rise in a decade. They'll show you city centre disruption, but not the bedroom tax, the benefit sanctions, the food banks that workers themselves use after their shift. The truth is this: these strikes aren't just a labour dispute, they're a form of local resistance. It's the last line of defence for council estates that have already been turned into something resembling a Victorian underclass. Because when you underfund, overcharge, and then pretend you care, all you're doing is recycling power. So what comes next? If we're serious about change, we need to go beyond strikes. We need local assemblies, community power, public ownership, and we need stories like this to be told not just in council minutes, but in art, in film, in audio. Because documentation is resistance and memory is power, because history is becoming what you had for breakfast. And to anyone listening in from across the Atlantic, don't be fooled. The UK isn't the quaint Downton Abbey postcard you think it is. It's a country collapsing in real time, held up by the unpaid labour of people it refuses to acknowledge. But I'll leave you with this. It always starts with the bins. First, they let the rubbish pile up. Then they let your housing fall apart. Then they take the library, the pool, the school, the sense of future, until all that's left is a managed decline, dressed in local branding and a labour rose. But the workers, we're not going anywhere. And the day we stop documenting is the day we accept the decline. That day has not come. This has been Jack Clark from the ground in Birmingham for Arts Express with your host, Prairie Miller.
Coming up next, the revival of the 1-minute Marxist on the show. And heading toward July 4th, coming up, a look at an extreme patriotic glee delivered by Iowa Senator Joni Ernst at a town hall meeting, where, as she proclaimed Medicaid cuts, protesters shouted, "People will die." That delightfully dedicated castrator of cattle on her Iowa farm countered, "We're all going to die." Though later, in a bizarre apology filmed while she wandered through a cemetery, Ernst advocated embracing, instead of health care, eternal life with Jesus instead. First, her ranting, then an episode of the Senate Minute Marxist this week in response.
So when you are arguing about illegals that are receiving Medicaid benefits, 1.4 million, 1.4, they are not eligible. So they will be coming off. So people are not, well, we all are going to die. So for heaven's sakes, folks. Okay, no, but what you don't want to do is listen to me.
Hello, everyone. I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely apologize for a statement that I made yesterday at my town hall. I was in the process of answering a question that had been asked by an audience member when a woman who was extremely distraught screamed out from the back corner of the auditorium, "People are going to die." And I made an incorrect assumption that everyone in the auditorium understood that, yes, we are all going to perish from this earth. So I apologize. And I'm really, really glad that I did not have to bring up the subject of the tooth fairy as well. But for those that would like to see eternal and everlasting life, I encourage you to embrace my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Hello there, this is Peter Wise broadcasting from Red, Iowa. Some listeners from the past might remember me for a couple of commentaries featuring my un-MAGA red view of Iowa, where I moved back to from Massachusetts after 50 years away in 2022. Since then, I've tried my best to like Iowa despite its Trumpian reputation and its existence as one more state where the feckless Democratic Party has been beaten into submission, along with all the old guard Republicans. Up to a few days ago, I thought I might have achieved a certain affection for the state. You know, Grant Wood paintings, a socialist-leaning state under the FDR presidency, a simplicity of moral vision that lingered up to my departure in 1969. And while I don't agree with Iowa political opinions in general, there's a certain directness that deserves respect. That is until our junior senator opened her sarcastic mouth a few days back in an Iowa town hall engagement that became national news instantly. Back to square one. Ernst continued the snark soon after recording a video monologue dripping with venom we have all grown to know courtesy of the GOP, issuing a phony apology lamenting the fact Iowans obviously were too stupid to understand that people do actually die. Visions of a fairy tale dragon salivating toxic slime before devouring one of his poor constituents came to mind. Imagine the gall of persons doomed to be thrown off Medicaid rolls asking for a chance to live a tolerable life with just basic medical care before shuffling off into eternity. No real surprise here, as a woman is it possible to be a woman and not human, broadcasts how much she'd like castrating cattle on her Iowa farm before hitting the big time. Is it possible to be indifferent to Ernst's obvious indifference to the people she supposedly serves? I'm not there yet. Frau Ernst served in the U.S. Army as an officer in Iraq, and normally as a military vet I would cut her some slack as I still maintain respect for officers in the military and, of course, enlisted people who actually do the work. However, it's impossible to relate whatsoever to standards which the current president ignores. It's also impossible to determine how an officer like Ernst could serve under Trump and not have to take a shower hourly to wash away the deference and servility to an executive who calls members of the military suckers and would love to see former chief of staff tried for treason. Ernst is one officer who deserves neither the respect or even tolerance from Americans at large, military or civilian. I am also a disabled vet, and I can readily empathize with the millions of Americans that don't have the luxury of free medical care that Ernst enjoys as a senator. Too bad Marie Antoinette used the term "let them eat cake" in observation of the plight of the masses in the 18th century in France, because it applies even more to Ernst and the unfortunate masses of common people here in 2025. This person never deserved to rise to public office, and I am hoping her Iowa constituents will agree in the next senatorial election for her seat in 2026. Of course, there's an option that she will resign, but only people who believe in unicorns see that as a possibility. What is also abundantly true is that MAGA will be emboldened now to speak like Ernst, Trump, Vance, and the entire MAGA menagerie from every corner of the U.S. And still, most Americans will not speak out against the mockery of democracy in their very lives. As the slogan went during the AIDS epidemic, silence is death, or at least a farewell to the imperfect system labeled as democracy. The funny thing about tacit permission in the case of all of us is that it hides culpability for the public for that silence, as well as the blame that should rest on the oppressors. The rise of the good German, that is, the silence of most Germans in the Third Reich to ignore the Holocaust as it was happening, was astoundingly rapid. To think it could not have be here as magical thinking on an even grander scale. For once, the herd, the masses, the public, the cruel indifference incitement to violence disguised as jokes and sarcastic references to the citizenry cascades before a nation even realizes it's too late to stop it. What is a solution? Is there a solution at all? Jim Morrison, an unlikely, tragic, and inebriated figure in the 60s iconic cultural history, sagely observed that they've got the guns, but we have the numbers, referring to the civil strife experienced at that time. The implication was ambiguous, but the truth of the statement stands even today. That is, if the people automatically look at the military as the handmaiden of the current government, America is doomed. Without the support of the U.S. military, the Trump circus cannot advance. With the opposition to the government by the military, the circus will be closed down. However, the military cannot just participate in resistance according to the military law that cites disobedience to the executive if that executive performs unconstitutionally. That's rhetorical happy talk and no more. The armed services only will respond when the public becomes so aroused that the military is compelled to act. So one question is whether the masses will first oppose the tyranny of about 1/3 of the American voters and march with their feet, as the other old slogan goes. Also, will the feckless and corrupt Democratic Party and its corrupt leadership step up or disintegrate as its members look elsewhere for a new party? Indeed, there are dozens of questions, and timing is a key factor. Ernst is a very visible image and danger both the right's total indifference and by her being elected as senator. She's also an example of the moral bankruptcy of the Democratic Party in Iowa and seemingly everywhere else. The right is betting if it will prevail permanently if the race to the bottom is won by the Democrats. That much is clear. So sadly, my good thoughts about Iowa have been flushed down the toilet, at least for now. That an errand knight will arrive to vanquish the heartless, mean, and greedy acolytes of Trump is an illusion. It will take Iowans and all Americans to rid this nation of the likes of black-hearted Ernst and the orange buffoon we call president. Does America really deserve these people? So far, without increasing civil disobedience, the answer is yes.
And that's all we have time for today on Arts Express, expression in the arts. And if you'd like to express yourself too, you can write to us at theradiogoddess@gmail.com. Until next time, this is Prairie Miller leaving the station.